So, what is Vinland Saga? Well, at its roots and in its simplest form, it's a historical manga series written and drawn by mangaka Yukimura Makoto, who has not necessarily worked on a lot of stuff, but he has been releasing manga for a while now. From 1999 to 2004, he released his debut series Planets, and after that worked on a one-shot titled Sayonara ga Chikai Nore, or in English, For Our Farewell is Near, another historical piece which parts of can be found at the end of some of the Vinland Saga volumes. Though the series in question right now is the one Yukimura Makoto has been working on since 2005, and that's Vinland Saga. A series that for as long as I can remember has been grouped up with series such as Vagabond or Oyasumi Pun Pun and many others, not only in terms of the quality of these series, but also in the sense that these series are considered unadaptable. The translation from manga to literally any other medium does not make sense. However, that doesn't mean Vinland Saga or any of the other series that I mentioned shouldn't get an adaptation. And it just so happens that the same Brave studio that picked up Attack on Titan when it literally had no other production to its name is the same Brave studio that is now attempting to adapt what is considered the unadaptable. So, how did they do? Well, right off the bat, I want to start by mentioning that you're always going to get a bunch of different opinions. There's always going to be fans that hold the manga to such a high regard, the way I do Tokyo Ghoul's manga, that no matter what the staff working on the series decide to do, even if it impacts the story positively, will always end up as a negative. But for me personally, I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about these 3 episodes, if any. Despite the very much backwards approach these episodes had compared to the manga, it's still very coherent. Some may say more so than the manga itself. But of course, despite these differences, the story still begins in the first volume or the first book. Though not on chapter 1. Now gear up, cause it's a bit of a trip. Episode 1 of Vinland Saga, alongside some anime original content, covers roughly chapters 3 and 4. Episode 2 covers chapters 5, 6, 7, and the very beginnings of both chapters 8 and 9. Episode 3 then goes back and covers the rest of chapters 8 and 9 and continues to cover chapters 10 and 11. I think I got that right, and I know it sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's just in these episodes there were a lot of changes in terms of how things were sequenced and with storyboarding. The most noticeable thing obviously being the fact that the series didn't start off by covering chapter 1. But honestly, none of the changes were bad at all, in my opinion. The episodes flowed really well into one another, more so than I think they would have had they decided to start off the adaptation from chapter 1. And especially so, because I'm sure most of us watched all 3 episodes in a row anyway. Though the big thing leading up to this series' anime debut was the look. People see a smidgen of CGI in the anime they are anticipating the most, and the pitchforks are already out. And honestly, in terms of art style, animation, and that type of stuff, I tend to reserve my opinion as it's not my strong suit, and plus I never let the look of a show keep me from watching it. I'm a story first, look second type of guy. Especially when A, the CGI here isn't even that bad, it's pretty fucking good, all things considered, and B, literally everything else looks bonkers. There were some amazing shots throughout the 3 episodes, and I honestly think they did the best they could when it came to adapting Yukimura's art. But that aside, did you see that cow in episode 1? Did you see that fucking cow? I'd milk the shit out of that cow, dog. Now, while the art in Vinland Saga is definitely amazing, it's the story that really does it for me. Now, I love Vinland Saga. It's one of my favorite series, period, and I'm certain that I'm going to love the discussion surrounding it as well. Though obviously, this is a series centered around Vikings and Viking tales, and while it's not a necessity to understand Norse mythology or Norse beliefs to watch or read this series, I do think that a lot of the themes, specifically with Thor's, it does help to know a little bit about Vikings. And it helps because you understand the severity of Thor's and the change he did go through. A change that is most noticeable within the first couple of minutes of the first episode. There's this huge contrast between who Thor's was, who he is, and who he desires to be. The first episode kicks off with this anime original action sequence where Thor's is absolutely slaughtering everybody in his path, acting as a typical Viking would, if you will. One of the main driving forces for this desire of battle is Valhalla, which I do believe was mentioned at least once throughout the first 3 episodes. Valhalla, in layman's terms, is essentially Viking heaven. Vikings believed that dying in combat, dying a warrior, dying bravely, gave them a good chance at this glorious afterlife. Where, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fallen warriors would arrive accompanied by the Valkyries just to feast with Odin and then battle just to die and repeat the process over and over again. There's a lot more to Valhalla than that, too much for me to cover in a video like this, but if you're interested, you can always read up on it yourself. We got this intense introduction to Viking life and Thor's, and not even a minute later, Thor's is a completely different person. And not only to who he was, but Thor's is different compared to everybody around him and the image his son Thorfinn has of him. Because Thor's is now essentially a pacifist. He's no longer this ruthless Viking. Thor's now sticks true to this ideal that there are no enemies or people worth hurting. And as you can see, as I just explained, this is very contrary to the common beliefs of Vikings. We see this in episode 3, as he doesn't really use his sword or really finish off any of the opposing soldiers. While the rest of the people in Thor's village who believe they are going to war are enthralled with the idea of going into battle for the first time and getting the chance of entering Valhalla, Thor's, somebody who, as we just saw, can take on armies and has lived this life the people going off to war with him are so excited to enter, cannot stand the thought or sight of it. And this is not to say that Thor's ideals are correct. This idea of not having to harm anyone is a very flawed point of view, in my opinion. New enemies will always present themselves. They'll always wash upon your shore and want to disturb your peace. But that doesn't mean his ideals are wrong either. And that's what's so fascinating about this series to me. Surrounded by a group of people who long for the sensation of war, one man is actively trying to separate himself and the people around him from that very thing, from those very ideals. But unfortunately, Thor's is in a situation where these ideals of his are being tested. So will Thor's pass this test and stick true to his new way of thinking, or will he resort to falling back on the mentality and behaviors of a Viking? But hey, as always, these are my thoughts, and I am curious to read yours. If you're an anime only, let me get your first impressions on this series and any other thoughts you may have in the comments down below. What do you think about Thor's? Are his ideals something he should be living by at this moment, with everybody, including his son, Thorfinn, facing great danger? And if you're a manga reader, let me know how you felt Studio Wit adapted this episode and what parts do you think they could have done a better job with, if any. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, it helps the channel out a lot. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, link will be in the description. And if you're new, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video and the way I sort of handle things. If you did, I encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and make sure you hit that bell. That way, you make sure you don't miss a video and can keep on watching Vinland Saga and many other series with me. And with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.